Hello. Good evening to everyone. Thank you for joining us. Well, we're glad that you're here, especially that it's raining and it's an Eastern weekend. So really, thanks to all of them for making to us here and making it here. Right, over there on the screen, you can scan your PO app, and you can see the QR codes to our Telegram and X if you want to scan it and join our communities. Right, so for those who are new here, because I am seeing some new faces, allow me to just give you a short introduction of what ETH Tbilisi is, right? So the motto is to make Ethereum cyberpunk again, right? And ETH Tbilisi is just a community by Ethereum enthusiasts, builders, researchers, who want to make this community for others who are like them, and for us to connect, for us to network, and for us to actually build Ethereum in Georgia together. So today's topic will be about encrypting the mempool, right? About EIP 8105 proposal aimed to make Ethereum transactions more private before they are finalized, with the goal of reducing front-running and improving fairness in all the networks. So the speakers today, we are joined by two guests from Shutter Network, Louise Bezzenberger and Lauren Harkness, who are here to just share their work and insights on the topic. Well, thank you for both of you for being here, and we're just looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the mempool encryption, EIP 8105, where this fits into Ethereum's future and why it matters for users, builders, and the broader ecosystem. So we're looking forward for your presentation. Thank you.
The company is called Brainbot, which is sort of the core developer behind Shutter. Brainbot's been active in the Ethereum space since 2014. And since a couple of years, we're building Shutter Network, which is a threshold encryption as a service mechanism. Now also venturing into, let's say, homomorphic encryption as well on the voting side. We're primarily serving these two use cases: the encrypted mempool, where we want to make the case that Ethereum L1 should have an encrypted mempool for front-running resistance and real-time censorship protection. And also then on the side, I just briefly mentioned it, for private voting, the same kind of decentralized threshold encryption mechanism we are also applying for voting, and it's live inside of Snapshot. And again, we're moving sort of to homomorphic encryption for threshold homomorphic permanently private voting. And the way we wanted to set this up, or the idea was that we start with a very brief, just intro us two, start with a very brief presentation, sort of like 5 minutes, and then we will kind of open the floor and open a little bit of a more generalized discussion.
Hey everyone, I'm Lauren, head of commercial at Brainbot, the same organization as Louis. I wish we could be there in person with you all. Unfortunately, we can't, maybe in the future. And normally at this point, I would wish everyone a hearty GM. But I'm actually going to break from the presentation because I got to tell you what happened to me just now. The craziest thing happened, and I just got to get it off my chest. So, it's like, 5:30 here in Germany. And, I've been feeling a little low energy today. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to go get a cup of coffee before the presentation starts. And there's this new place which opened up in my neighborhood. It's called the Coffee Market. Louis, I don't know. Have you been there? Okay, so this place,
great place.
Yeah, the Coffee Market is this crazy place where there's no fixed price for coffee. The prices actually fluctuate based on the time of day and based on consumer demand. And, I went in kind of in the middle of the afternoon thinking I could get a cheap cup of coffee, just to give me a perk before we got on stage here. And, it's one of these new fancy cafes where you scan the QR code in order to order. And I scanned the QR code and I ordered my normal Americano. and it was like, hey, the price is $5. And I was like, cool, okay, submit order. And then this window popped up on my phone, and it was like, hey, like, we all know the price is $5, right? Price is $5. But what's the maximum you'd be willing to pay for that cup of coffee? And I was like, what's the maximum I'd be willing to pay? I don't know. I mean, this presentation is kind of important, and like, I'm feeling low energy. So maybe I'd be willing to pay like $50 for a cup of coffee? And, I didn't really think anything of it. And then I went to tap my credit card in order to make payment. And in the split second before my card hit the payment terminal, the price of coffee skyrocketed to $50. And when I touched my card, I ended up paying $50 for that cup of coffee. And like, I didn't know what was going on. And, after I had gotten my cup of coffee and settled down, I went and I spoke to the manager, and the manager was like, hey, look, you said that you'd be willing to pay $50 for a cup of coffee, even though the price is $5. And so what someone started doing probably is they started buying up all the coffee in the store and in this town, driving the price up from $5 all the way up to $50. And so when you actually paid like the maximum amount that you'd be willing to pay. And then that person, after you paid, probably started selling coffee back into the market. And now the price is $5 again. And I was like, this is crazy. Like who would buy a cup of coffee thinking that they're going to pay $5 and end up paying $50, right? Just because someone can see that order and manipulate it. And I was like, I'm never going back to this coffee shop again. Like, the coffee market is dead to me. I am so pissed off, and I just needed to share all of this with you guys because it is unreal. Now,
Crazy place.
Yeah. Obviously, you guys are sitting there thinking, like, what? This is a crazy story. This is kind of stupid. Like, who would pay $50 for a cup of coffee? Who would manipulate a coffee market? And it's actually kind of a silly story, but it does kind of give an insight into just how crazy malicious MEV on Ethereum has become. Because that exact scenario where someone is making a purchase and a sophisticated actor can see that purchase order and then place their transaction before that order and then after order, thus manipulating the price and giving the user the worst price and extracting value from that transaction reordering attack. That's actually exactly what malicious MEV is. And it's one of the problems which has plagued Ethereum for the past 4 or 5 years. And estimates range, but one solid estimate we often refer to is that $1.8 billion has been extracted, or some might even say stolen, from everyday normal Ethereum users, people like me and you. And so what we're going to be doing in this call with you guys today is we're going to be talking about some of the efforts in order to prevent malicious MEV on Ethereum mainnet. And it's actually a super hot topic right now. There has been a flurry of proposals, EIPs, with different ways to introduce encrypted mempools one solution for preventing malicious MEV. I'm going to hand it back over to Louis, and he's going to take you through some of the current conversation, and then we'll kind of have a fireside chat and hopefully field some questions from you all in the audience. But again, thank you for having us here today.
I think it's a great intro, and I think should make it a little more tangible of what the core problem is. The way I started was, or I want to start this presentation is, even just in general, not even just crypto, just in general, what would you expect from your kind of like your marketplace, right, or your financial ordering machine to do, right? And obviously, people, maybe banks or certain kind of more professional actors would maybe put forward this efficiency argument, or you want to have very, very low latency trading or things like this. I don't think normal people care that much, right? I think they're more interested in just fairness and kind of like you need to be sure that you're not being put at a disadvantage when you enter this market, right? It's like even crypto and traditional finance. When you trade, be that in your broker app with the bank, or be that in crypto with I don't know, Solana or Ethereum or Coinbase, whatever, your primary concern is, am I not getting exploited, or is it going to be a fair environment that I'm trading in here? So neutrality, credibility, fairness, I think is kind of like paramount. And both in TradFi and crypto is basically kind of to a certain degree fundamentally broke. I mean, it works, but it also doesn't work that well. So I would say in traditional finance, it's interesting front running, which is basically what Lauren just laid out. Basically, is the ability to see transactions early, see your transaction early, and sort of jump the queue and steal your trade, right? So front running. So that happens in the real world as well, or happened in the past, just kind of was, so in general, made illegal, or at least the bulk of it. There's still ways that people get front run in the real world. It's quite interesting. Julian Ma from the ETH has a cool viewpoint on this. But essentially, front running is made illegal. But you have all these other problems that are also, and it is, I think, there's a lot of time and money spent to ban it and to make it sort of like, and to enforce trust and to enforce this regulation, right? But you also have all these other sort of related issues with transaction ordering and with kind of like, where does your transaction hit the exchange? For example, kind of similar to crypto, you have these dark pools. In crypto, you have private mempools. In the real world, you have these alternative venues for where trading happens. Another word for it is MTFs, multilateral trading facilities. The dark pools and MTFs, similarly in a way also to crypto, they fragment liquidity, and certain people want to be able to trade kind of on their own there and be have better prices there than kind of the public markets. So that's also another issue. Then you have this payment for order flow topic. So basically, that's kind of the primary income for these new brokers, right? Like Robinhood in the US. In Germany, you have something called Trade Republic, very similar, like when you can trade your stocks on your app, right? What happens is your order flow gets sold to these market makers, because that's like interesting order flow, right? People are seeing, there might be something to capitalize on your order flow, right? And so your neo broker sells this order flow to these market makers, and thus they can offer you these extremely low, even sometimes like free trading fees, because they monetize your trades, right? So that's kind of another issue. And general latency and arbitrage just creates inefficiencies. And in crypto, we have this thing. There's no kind of like legal or illegal. It's still like a little bit of a Wild West, I would say. Although that's sort of potentially also being discussed to make it illegal. But you have this front running issue, somewhat addressed by these kind of private mempools, but that just means you're taking this sort of alternative route through a trusted to a trusted transaction supply chain intermediary that kind of guarantees you, based on his trust, that they won't front run you, which is kind of like band-aid on the problem. So yes, that's sort of like good for the immediate problem. But then now it creates this trust issue, right? Now you have to trust these people or institutions to not front run you. And that's kind of like, that's the whole point of blockchain. You do not want to trust those intermediaries. So not optimal. And also, again, fragmentation there as well creates all these different places where transactions are flowing through. Not optimal for kind of like liquidity and kind of like centralized and sort of like a good marketplace. Also, we have this builder oligopoly. So we have kind of like with PBS, we're separating between proposers and builders on the protocol level, and PBS was introduced to reduce the proposer monopoly, to reduce kind of the centralization there. But now kind of the issue is as well, we have on the builders who are actually creating the block, right? You only have two builders that are dominating like 95% of all blocks. So that's another just centralization issue, and also a censorship issue. That I think both of these are situated in the US, where in the past you had these talks around censorship and OFAC list. So very, very likely that they will be regulated in the future and not to include certain transactions based on this sanction lists and OFAC list. So again, that's like, it's not a good situation if you have only two major builders kind of being the gateway and the gatekeeper to the mempool, right? And we talked about this MEV extraction and kind of like just a lot of exploited value, right? So enter kind of encrypted mempools. The idea is, instead of sending a transaction either to the public mempool where it's transparent and you're just getting exploited, or sending it to a trusted single party where you just have to trust them that they won't front run you. Instead, it is sort of like encrypted in either you yourself encrypt, or there is a decentralized way to encrypt, and then you send it into the mempool encrypted, and the block producer, they have to commit on the inclusion and order of the transactions while they're still encrypted. So even kind of the validator, builder, proposer, even they can't see what's in the transactions. They have to commit blind to the inclusion of transactions, right? And only afterwards do they, only after this order is like fixed in place, only after this, there is this decryption step, again, either by you yourself or by this kind of this decentralized encryption mechanism. Only after that's released, and then it's executed. And that just ensures, well, even the validator, builder, proposer themselves can't see what's in the transactions. Very hard to front run if you don't see what's in them, right? And very hard to censor as well. So that's kind of just like the ELI 5. And then we kind of like have the opinion that a threshold encryption is probably the best encryption decryption mechanism, because that's this decentralized way of encrypting decrypting. But there's also other encryption methods, just as encrypting yourself, or for example, TEs, which is a hardware type of encryption decryption mechanism. And why we think this matters is kind of like primarily it's actually less about front running, because again, we have kind of like quick fixed front running with these private mempools. So, well, people have different opinions on why it's important, but to me, maybe like censorship resistance is sort of like maybe the important one, right? If you encrypt transactions, it's extremely hard to censor them, because you don't even know what's in the transaction, right? So I think that's a major one. And again, this like in reducing centralized trust assumptions in the mempool. A really big one to me is if we create this more fair marketplace and this more accessible marketplace where people don't get front run left and right, or where you don't have these like white glove specialized mempools and fragmented liquidity lanes where only certain people have access to, I think we can get more people to the table, right? We can, if we level the playing field, basically, we can just get more people to be interested in and be and add just more traders and more people, which means more liquidity. And to me, that means ultimately more transactions, better prices, everything, right? So I think that's key to, I think to me, it's if you build a really good marketplace, a trustworthy marketplace, it just means you attract more liquidity, right? Also, I think applies to institutions because, as we've seen, like in traditional finance, it's actually just like made illegal. And just from a compliance perspective, sometimes, or regulatory perspective, traditional finance institutions might not even, they certainly they won't feel comfortable trading on a marketplace where front running is possible, right? So I think it's like that's an argument for making it impossible as well. And then we talked about this builder and private mempool oligopoly. I think that's something where the encrypted mempool can level the playing field, and even for the builders can actually empower smaller builders to now be actually have more chance. Because right now you're trusting these large builders not to front run you. The more you take that trust assumption away and say like it's part of the protocol that there's no front running, the more we think you empower smaller builders again to be able to compete with the large builders, because trust is something that smaller, newer builders maybe haven't accumulated yet, right? And then quite quickly, what's the current status of this, right? So we proposed something that's called EIP 8105, which is this protocol level encrypted mempool, encryption technology and agnostic. It's not even specific to threshold encryption. Any encryption can be used. And right afterwards, some small kind of team, kind of primarily from the EF, has proposed their own approach to this called Lucid. Very similar approach, and that's why we said we should join forces, because it's kind of the goal side is very similar, and also on the approach is pretty similar. So we joined forces to bring this to Ethereum. It was then not included. It's pretty likely that it won't be included in the Hegota hard fork, but there is actually a good chance for it to be included the next fork, the iStar hard fork, because it was just listed on the EF Strawman roadmap for iStar in 2027. And in general, there is a lot of feedback that came from this client process from the client teams and this voting process, which I think should now lead to us and Lucid team and others iterating on the design and just making it a lot better. So a couple of examples here. There is very good criticism from Flashbots coming that that backrunning is less efficient in this design. So maybe first and foremost, just briefly, the encrypted mempool only prevents front running, not all MEV. It can by definition only prevent front running, and backrunning is still able to. There's still ways to exploit to extract backrunning MEV, which is actually something that people think is good, because that's for liquidations and arbitrage, and can actually, if you then pay that back to the user, that's actually kind of considered sort of like benign/good MEV. Totally possible in both Lucid and EIP 8105. Just the exact way how to extract it is arguably less efficient, and you can extract maybe a little bit less of it as compared to a private mempool. So I think there are strong approaches to bringing that backrunning efficiency to the same level as for private mempools, which I think one of them is post-inclusion ordering, maybe some other ideas. And by the way, just all in all, I don't think it matters even that much, because it certainly is better than it would be in the public mempool. So if you compare against private mempools, there might be some efficiency losses, but if you compare against a public mempool, that's certainly kind of like better. The situation should be better for the user because they're not getting front running. There's talks about potentially combining it with frame transactions, because they're kind of like this UX account abstraction type EIP. And then I think there is definitely a push for it. It should be ideally as post-quantum resistant as possible. There's a strong push from the Ethereum Foundation to make everything. Every addition to the protocol should be every cryptography addition to the protocol should be post-quantum resistant. which it is. Both the EIP 815 and Lucid are, because they're encryption technology agnostic. It's just you need to make sure that there is actually sensible and good encryption technologies that fulfill the criteria. And then while kind of this being figured out, and we're kind of working on I would say the next generation of this EIP, we are also just building out of protocol. So one thing that's been live actually for a longer time now is an out of protocol version of the encrypted mempool on Gnosis chain, and that's actually supported by the Nethermind and Aragon clients. So recommend everyone to check that out. But for Ethereum L1, we're also bringing that to Ethereum L1 via together with PrimeF, which have this builder and proposer commitment scheme called MEV Commit. And we have built this together with the PrimeF team, have built this encrypted mempool lane basically into that. And that's really ready for builders to adopt. So if you know any builders, or if you are working at a builder, talk to us. We would love to have you guys be part of that and support it, so that we can have an out of protocol version of the encrypted mempool before it gets fully implemented deeply into the protocol. That's kind of it. And just showing the EF strawman roadmap, where you can see the encrypted mempool here is scheduled for ISTAR 2027. 2027, yeah, and along with other things. And here, very brief sneak peek on this the swap demo app in AMM for this Shutter PrimeF or Encrypted Mempool X MEV commit out of protocol implementation. Yeah, that's it. And we think, by making the mempool by bringing back the public, so maybe that's something I forgot to say. The public mempool is broken, everyone agrees. So that's why people are choosing these private mempools. And I think the encrypted mempool is a way to bring back the public mempool and level the playing field. And by doing so, I think we're doing good and making Ethereum more attractive to everyone.
So, Louis, you were talking mostly about encrypted mempools and the efforts to implement them on Ethereum mainnet. Is this the first time that a blockchain has sought to implement encrypted mempools, or are there examples from other chains outside of Ethereum mainnet?
Yeah, good question. I would say Ethereum is, or the Ethereum ecosystem, I would say, is leading the charge, definitely, because that we have already proposed this a couple of years back, together with the Gnosis team. So I would say Ethereum is certainly leading the charge, and then Gnosis chain with the encrypted mempool on Gnosis chain, I would say that's the first one, the first live implementation. But definitely not in the vacuum here. So definitely other chains have been looking to the same thing, either inspired by our efforts or coming to the same realization independently. So maybe one notable one was Anoma very early on. They had a DKG proposed inside of the protocol. We've seen, I think we've seen more recently, we've seen Aptos proposing one as well, very similar approach. And then, yeah, and maybe really noteworthy, but still within the Ethereum ecosystem, is the Arbitrum ordering sort of design. So Arbitrum is famously really pro fairness and pro fair ordering. Sometimes maybe even too fair or too optimistically fair, where maybe Flashbots or other more efficiency-minded people would say it doesn't work this way, and it creates weird sort of spamming situations. So they initially had this really fully fair ordering protocol, where first in, first out, and that's worked somewhat well. But that also really is a fair ordering protocol, not encrypted. but I think they have their goal aligned in that they want to actually get a fair transaction order, right? And they have since updated it, which is to something that's called time boost, and then the decentralized time boost version together with Espresso, that's also relatively similar to our approach with the threshold encryption and the Encrypt the Mempool. So Arbitrum definitely noteworthy in that space as well.
Cool. There's an important concept which we kind of just gave the most surface explanation of, which is really at the core of Shutter, and that is commit and reveal threshold encryption. And for everyone listening, it's probably good for us to dive into that in a little bit more detail, because it underpins everything that Shutter does, from malicious MEV prevention with encrypted mempools to private voting and other applications. So to break that down for you, there's commit and reveal threshold encryption. When we talk about commit and reveal, this is a special type of encryption which is really important, not in the sense of making something private and hiding it away forever and always from everyone. This is a type of encryption which is particularly applicable in simultaneous move situations, where it would, if one player were to see the other player's move before making their own move and use that information asymmetry to their advantage, then they could potentially win every time, or exploit or manipulate the game for their desired outcome. A really good example of this is rock, paper, scissors. That's a classic simultaneous move situation where 1, 2, you have to show rock, paper, or scissors, and the other person has to do the same. And it works really well when you're in person, because we trust each other, and our reflexes aren't fast enough to see the other person's move before making our move. But just imagine that we played a lopsided game of rock, paper, scissors, where we counted to 3, you had to show your move, and then we counted 4, 5, 6, and I got to show my move. Then it would be completely unfair. It wouldn't be a simultaneous move situation anymore. So the way that we can make this simultaneous move situation more fair and neutral is by essentially encrypting the moves when people commit to them. So you can imagine a kind of partition between me and my opponent. I show 1, 2, 3, and then I lock in that move, and then the other player locks in his or her move, and once both moves are locked in, then the partition is removed and the results are revealed. That's kind of the essence behind commit and reveal encryption. And if you think about it, private voting is another wonderful example. Not even thinking about DAOs or blockchain-based voting, but if you think about like putting your ballot in an envelope and then in a locked ballot box, that's actually kind of a manual form of commit and reveal encryption, which keeps all ballots secret until the end of the voting period. And then the second part of that is threshold encryption. So going back to, so threshold encryption is basically, instead of relying on a trusted third party in order to provide the encryption and decryption service, you rely on a distributed group of nodes which collaborates to generate encryption and decryption keys. And this is a very decentralized and robust way of doing encryption. It does start off with an honest majority assumption or an honest threshold assumption. But there are layers of security that you can put in place in order to kind of provide a backstop to that honest threshold assumption. One of those is you can do staking and slashing so that if any of the nodes is acting dishonestly, they'll have an economic penalty. And then there are some cutting edge cryptographic techniques, including cryptographic snitching, where if one node does try to collude maliciously with other nodes, then the other nodes can actually see that malicious behavior, generate a cryptographic proof of the bad behavior, and then use that to both penalize the malicious node and to get a bounty or a reward themselves. And this is really, at the heart of everything that Shutter does. And so I'm going to ask another question of Lewis. Specifically to encrypted mempools, you mentioned that someone could encrypt their own transaction, that they could use a decentralized encryption provider. I guess the question is, with EIP A105, is Shutter looking to enshrine our version of commit and reveal threshold encryption into the Ethereum core protocol, or is something different being proposed?
Yeah, no, exactly. Definitely not. So the idea is to keep it open and generalized, and to say that any encryption technology that satisfies a very general and broad kind of like interface spec should be allowed, and especially any key provider, you should be allowed to provide keys. Yeah? And just to but I would say just to kind of nail down, or also to reiterate a little bit why threshold encryption is kind of uniquely suited to do this is one, yeah, it's just this decentralized way, right? So you want to decentralize it, right? But especially the unique property of threshold encryption is kind of it solves this last look problem, or this kind of like this free option problem. So if you encrypt with your own private key, that would also be decentralized, right? Because everyone encrypts with their own private key. But then there's a kind of a game theoretic issue, because if you encrypt with your own private key, then you have an option later not to decrypt. And then you can actually invalidate your transaction and pull back your transaction at a later point. And why that's a big problem is because there's always an option kind of in. So if you do let's say you commit to buying ETH at $1,000, I don't know, and then there's going to be some time, let's say 10 seconds, where the price fluctuates up and down. If you then if you've already committed to it, and then afterwards you can just pull back your trade because you've seen, oh, the price went against me, maybe price in the meantime went to $990, you now no longer want to buy at 1,000, right? So you'll just pull it back and you invalidate your transaction, and that's this free option. So you have a free option not to decrypt, essentially, if you yourself encrypt. And now imagine this more elaborate attack where you just send 1,000 transactions at varying price points of ETH, right? And you just always just select the best one for you, right? So that's kind of like then clearly sort of break the system. So you want to have it decentralized, and you need to eliminate this free option to make it just like work and sound, right? So that's kind of this unique thing for threshold encryption, because it kind of like enforces decryption, and you're not the one who decrypts, and it does so in a decentralized way where there's no. So the cool thing is always like you have like 12. Let's say you have 12 out of 17 nodes need to come together to decrypt, right? It's like this threshold of 12 compared to the total number of nodes of 17. So let's say all the nodes that come together, like 6, 7, 8, 9, and then you're at like 11, right? So you just need one more key share to then get to the decryption. So you have 11, but you need 12, right? And then there would be a theoretical free option, right? Where one person could say, oh, I'm not releasing my key share. I can now kind of have this free option not to decrypt. But because now there's still up to 17 left, so you still have 8 people left, right? No, fuck, bad math. 6 or something, I don't know. 12, 17 minus, right? You have a large number of actors, which all of them can submit the last key share. So you're taking away the option to decrypt from the option not to decrypt from one person to suddenly there's all these people who all can choose to submit the key share and decrypt. So really making it extremely easy to get decrypted, especially then if you scale it to 200 nodes, right? Then there's really like pretty sure that it'll get decrypted. So that's kind of this like property of this is nice property of like kind of unstoppable decryption, and sort of like it will be decrypted, and that's why we think threshold encryption is probably the best approach. But yeah, still keep it generalized and keep it open, especially keep it future proof, right? There might be much cooler and much better cryptographic systems in 2, 3 years down the road, which we want to have it be compatible with as well.
Maybe just a quick note, when Lewis mentions keep it generalized, what we're really talking about is allowing or creating a competitive marketplace for key provider services, for encryption and decryption services. So we could imagine that some users which have low value transactions, they may be willing to trust a TEE because it's fast and cheap and it has hardware assumptions. Other users which have high value transactions or sensitive transactions may prefer to use threshold encryption and rely on cryptography rather than hardware. In the future, it might be FHE or some other type of encryption, but really giving users a choice there. At this point, I understand that there are some questions from the audience, so I'd love to open it up to the floor, and we can dive into the topics which are most interesting to you.
Thanks a lot to come here, actually. I'm Lali Lulelo. We talk a lot like on X and on Telegram. I'm very thankful to be here. And it was a very like exciting conversation, actually, that you do, because I had like some question and you totally like take all of the points that I wanted to ask. So now we start the Q&A session. This section will be hosted by David, which is here, and we are trying also to, because we take the people from the audience when they ask the question to come here, and so you will be able to see them in face. That I know that with remote events it's very difficult because you don't see the actual audience, and so thank you so much to be here, and now we start this section.
So hi once again, thank you for the presentation. Lauren, my first question is with you. I loved your story about the coffee. However, was it just an analogy to set up the energy for the presentation, or did this really happen?
No, this is just a story used to illustrate what MEV would look like in an everyday situation. But for better or worse, it did not happen.
Okay, thank you. Well then, the next question would be, I will start with a couple of basics ones. However, I want to know, when do you expect an encrypted mempool to be on the Ethereum mainnet?
So it's really a decision which is up to the Ethereum core developers and the Ethereum client teams, which are in charge of implementing changes to the Ethereum core protocol. But there were a couple of proposals to have encrypted mempools as a headliner for Hegota, which is not the upcoming hard fork, but the one after that one. Those proposals were not accepted. And so there seems to be a rough consensus that encrypted mempools are likely to be implemented in iStar. And that is also supported by the Ethereum Foundation's straw map, which was published recently as well. And to give you a specific calendar date, I think we can expect iStar to take place probably in August or September of next year.
All right, thank you. And the next question would be to Louis. I just want to know, will the encrypted mempools add any noticeable latency to the transactions?
Just want to add one thing to the question before, because we're also working on this auto protocol version of the encrypted mempool with PrimeF. So I think that's an opportunity to get it in earlier. And it depends a little more on adoption from supply chain engineers, so like builders. So it's a little more of an uphill battle if we go this route. But at least there will be the option for people to use it. It might take a little longer for a transaction to go in, but that will be an option hopefully very soon. But yeah, will there be a latency impact? Yes. So essentially, the way we think about it is it depends on the EIP and depends on the exact approach. But ours and Lucid EIP, essentially, we would say that if you do a transaction in this block, then if you don't send it through the encrypted mempool, it would have the chance to land in this block, right? In the N, right? Whereas if you use the encrypted mempool, it'll be the earliest of it that'll be included would be at the top of the block in N+1. So depending on that, it means like kind of like it'll land in the next block. So you don't have, if you do it now, you don't have the chance that it lands in this block. It'll always be the next block. It's kind of like the way to think about it. But like, yeah, I think like in the grand scheme of things, latency for Ethereum doesn't really matter, because you have kind of this 12 seconds, or in the future maybe 10 seconds, or maybe in the future maybe have 6 seconds. And I would say all the encryption technologies that we're looking into and everything should kind of be well below that, right? I think we can get threshold encryption also kind of into the order of 100 milliseconds to decrypt. So I think on the time scales we're talking about in Ethereum, the latency and this like time to decrypt isn't really that big of a deal. Might be a bigger issue for like Solana, because there's all about like super low latency, or like mega ETH, right? Whereas everything about low latency, then maybe the decryption step and all of that stuff adds more latency. That's about it. Yeah.
Thank you. I believe people from the audience have additional questions.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming and speaking today. I'm Fry, and I've been going to these events for a while. And before I ask my question, just wanted to say I'm primarily an Ethereum maximalist. Even though I've messed around on other chains, for the most part, I always come back to Ethereum. Can't really give up on it. So if my question seems a bit harsh, I just wanted to start by framing that in this way so you wouldn't think I was just being an Ethereum hater. With the future bringing potential existential threats to blockchain, we're starting to see serious media outlets come out and say things like quantum computing, AI could break blockchain, and all these different types of existential threats. To me, it feels like the ability to solve problems, especially simple ones like this that have taxed users nearly $2 billion during the lifetime of Ethereum. It seems like being able to solve those problems is particularly important. So my question is, why has it taken so long for this solution to be implemented? And it seems like it's just such a great fix to something that's been taxing users for such a long time.
I think very good question. Yeah, I think it's, and I think there's many reasons, and maybe we're overstating a bit how simple it is. So I think it does require relatively extensive protocol changes for this to work, to both the consensus and the execution client. And also I would say one big criticism people definitely can have is that none of the encryption technologies is perfect in this regard. Yeah, so the threshold encryption, you have this trust assumption where you still need to trust that X percentage of the nodes are honest. TEEs, as Lauren said, you have this hardware trust assumption, so you need to trust sort of like Intel or whoever, that they don't have a backdoor, and also you have this hardware requirement on nodes that would have to run this specialized hardware that has this TEE or SGX or compatibility. So I think that's a valid criticism, and where maybe some people would say, let's wait a little longer even for us to have the perfect kind of matured cryptography, so that it's like kind of like fully end-to-end safe and yeah. But yeah, I think the reasons are kind of like coordination, awareness. Maybe one thing that has slowed it down is actually private mempools, right? Because the without private mempools, the problem would be a lot more obvious, and people would get front run left and right. Yeah. So you'd see the graph, and the front running is going down. So people would say, great, so we saw front running, right? So that's a little bit of a misconception, I would say, because again, we saw front running, but introducing strong trust assumptions, and maybe even introducing a censorship vector, right? Because now you have these private mempools where they can not just run, but they could also now censor your transactions. So I would say private mempools might even have slowed down this track. But yeah, the general answer: different factors, complexity, awareness. Yeah, but yeah, great question.
Thank you very much, first of all, for this meeting. Thank you, the organizers. It was a very informative, slides. My questions are, as a builder, how much does this ape affect the builder side, or is it more a provider side change to ecosystem?
Both. I mean, would change both, right? But specifically on what happens to the builder's bottom line, right? Could be a question. I'd say so like, very simply speaking, kind of like the total MEV would be reduced by the amount of front running, right? So the pie would kind of like in the first place get a little smaller to distribute, right? Again, I think there is a way to make it such that the same backrunning efficiency and same way to backrun can be applied. So in our view, it would be only the front running that would disappear, or the front running type of MEV. So, and then you can make the argument for builders and searchers and validators. Usually that gets split up, right? You have some amount of MEV, and that gets kind of like distributed between the searcher who found the opportunity, the builder, and the proposer. And then maybe even some of it gets paid back to the user, depending on yeah. But so I think arguably the pie gets smaller by the amount of front running. So you could argue the income for builders would shrink slightly, yeah, which I think is a fair argument. That's probably not good for builders, right? It's not good for their income. However, I would say a couple of things. That one is, I think everyone kind of agrees that front running isn't like a very sustainable way to sort of make money. Again, we've seen it is even illegal in the real world. Might become. We've seen even comments from regulators that they see MEV and front running in crypto similarly to front running in the real world. And there might be even like ideas to regulate it. Number two, it scares away users, right? So it's just not like. You see it with rollups, right? Rollups are definitely not front running the users, or kind of like trustworthy rollups like Optimism or Arbitrum. They can front run their users. They could. They are also just choosing not to, right? Because they know it's just extremely bad for adoption, right? So I would say everyone agrees front running will go away, or is already been going away. It's just a question of how exactly does it go away, and who and how are we just eliminating it by now we're trusting someone not to front run, or are we kind of fixing it on the lower level? Hopefully that answers the question. Or
Thank you, Luis. I really liked your answer actually, because the second question of mine was about MEV. So are you saying that it essentially disappears?
And yeah, no. So I tried to explain that basically, I would say we roughly separate between front running and back running. Front running is the one where you jump in front of someone, and back running is the one that your trade does something, changes the price of an asset, and that let's say dislodges the price to a certain degree, and now you have a 1% difference of the price to maybe a price on another DEX, which is maybe more true to the true market price. So that creates this 1% arbitrage opportunity. So back running means you attach yourself directly afterwards and exploit that, right? So front running can be basically solved by this encrypted mempool approach. Back running cannot, or not reasonably, and that's actually not a bad thing in some ways, right? Because back running people actually even either they tolerate it as an okay thing, or they would even say it's a good thing because arbitrage kind of makes prices be better across DEXs, and if you pay back the arbitrage profit to the user, that even gets him a better price as well. So we would expect that just the front running profit, just the front running MEV disappears or gets shrunk by a lot, and the back running MEV remains. And again, as I said before, I think that the front running, that's I would say in general the consensus that front running is not a sustainable way to earn income. Even Flashbots or other kind of people who are deeply into MEV, the systems how they set it up are already kind of like set up in a way that that they're choosing kind of based on trust not to front run.
So you're as I understand, you're basically saying that you can still see the trend of MEV, but in the past, not in right now with front running.
Yeah, I would say the front running will go away anyway, right? And back running MEV will remain because that's just arbitrage, right? In the real world, there is no MEV. In the real world, you just have trading and arbitrage and front running. And front running is illegal and stupid, and and kind of trading and arbitrage still exists, and that's good because arbitrage means you're exploiting all the little inefficiencies. Yeah, so I think that's the same level you could just think about in crypto as well. Front running is cheating, like you're jumping the queue, right? And back running and arbitrage is just trading, and you're just just means somebody is exploiting arbitrage opportunities, and it's actually positive.
And I'll ask one more question. The MEV actually is a subject that I had a close relation to because I do my projects with account abstraction, and my third question is about how much that will affect the Mempools of ERC 4437 Mempools. Because I think it's public, it's more public. Will the change also affect the ERC 337 Mempools?
Yeah, I mean, for now, it's generally just compatible with that, right? And it doesn't really affect it. So account abstraction should just work. But yeah, then you already said it correctly. Like there's another mempool there in front of the public mempool that would then be public, and then there the MEV can be extracted. So so then the encrypted mempool on the protocol level is kind of useless because you already seen the transaction before. So yeah, that would need I think that would just need to be addressed separately, either by another round of encryption, for example, or again, alternatively, a trust assumption there where you say you have to trust the account abstraction, or say paymaster or whatever. It's the one who kind of is control of that transaction. Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm Zach. Thanks for the talk. I had a question about back running, and Because, like you're saying, back-running is just arbitrage and generally a good thing. So is all the back-running going to be pushed into the next block? Or are there ways or ideas of how to let people back-run in a single block?
Not all back running, but the back running of those encrypted transactions would happen immediately afterwards. Yeah. So, yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. So no back-running in the same block, right? And then are there
maybe something we forgot to mention is all this just optional, right? So you would still have unencrypted transactions, encrypted transactions, and unencrypted transactions. So that's just a new transaction type. The encrypted transaction is just a new transaction type, and the backrunning of those transactions would happen at the top, after the top of the next block.
are there ways to let people backrun in the same block, or has anyone thinking about how to let people backrun immediately after trades and stuff, or just?
Do you mean for the encrypted transactions? Because that's kind of like not possible, right? Because they're not even revealed at this time, right? They're just revealed at the top of the next block. So that's when, and the builder who builds the next block just has then the ability to extract the backrunning there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's all. Thanks.
There's I think there is a really interesting, deeper conversation there to be had to how exactly it is extracted, and essentially, I would say one problem that the current designs have is, and I try to touch on this in the slide, that it's basically just one big transaction that you do after the encryption transactions, and that backruns all of them. So whereas currently every individual transaction gets backrun in the private mempools. So arguably, depending on how you view, like from a system perspective, the one transaction is more efficient because you don't need to do thousands of little transactions. But from a trading perspective, the individual backrunning is more efficient because everyone kind of gets backrun and everyone can get paid back. So if you also have this assumption that really like always everyone gets paid back, the users, then I think there's a good case to be made that the private mempool backrunning is more efficient. That's why I said, like, ideally we have a design where the same level of backrunning efficiency and the per transaction backrunning is reintroduced to it. But I think we don't have that currently, but I think it's conceptually possible.
If this proposal 8105 never ships, what is the next best path for protecting users from malicious MEV? That's the question.
Oh, good question. I'm biased. No. So today, definitely, I would say choose your poison from the existing private mempools. I am not sure how much it matters between, let's say, FlashBots Protect and MEV Blocker and all the others. So yeah, I think as I said, kind of the public mempool unfortunately is broken. Probably not recommend anyone to trade there if they're worried about, let's say, a slippage and things like getting front run. So yeah, I would just use one of these private mempools. That's saying, like, if you want to use any DEX, I would say if you are fine with getting with a specific DEX, which is CowSwap, I think that's a great alternative as well, right? So CowSwap is an AMM or an exchange design which is inherently a lot more MEV resistant, because you have dispatch auctions and you're optimizing around trader welfare and not around profit, right? So I'd say some trust assumption as well. Like we've seen a big exploit happening there as well. In the recent, just a couple of weeks ago. So you need to trust those solvers to a certain degree that they actually find a good solution for you. But if you do that, then CowSwap is a good alternative. So that's for today. Then medium term, I hope the PrimeMeV Encrypted Mempool gets ready. Then plugging that as a good medium term solution, hopefully once it's ready. And then long term, protocol.
Thank you very much. Would you like to add something?
Actually, I don't have question because I think we pretty much like wrap up everything. But in closure, I really want to thank you guys to came, because I think that mempool encryption, and since like the discussion started, is something that is very important for the long term of Ethereum in general, and so thank you guys to do like all of this hard work in all of this time.
Thank you so much for having us. Just as kind of a mandatory shameless plug, if you are interested in learning more about Shutter and our work, please go to Shutter, SHUTTER.network, and you can find all the information there. If you're interested in encrypted mempools, just do a quick search for EIP 8105 or Lucid, LUCID encrypted mempools. And of course, this isn't something, excuse me, this isn't something that we can implement alone. And so if you are a wallet, a protocol developer, a block builder, if you even just a user on Ethereum, please think about how you can contribute to implementing encrypted mempools, whether it's on a technical level or merely just hopping on X and saying that you're bullish on encrypted mempools for censorship resistance and preventing toxic MEV.
I'm bullish on it. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.